and I blew it up shortly after. And but I persevered, and I borrowed friends' acoustic guitars, and I learned to fingerpick because the sister of my pal, who was the other Everly brother in our lives, his big sister wanted to sing in folk clubs, so we started accompanying in folk clubs, and I started to then folk singer taught me how to fingerpick. And fingerpicking is, you begin usually doing sort of one to the bars, like where you've got 6 strings and your thumb takes the bottom 3 essentially, and your fingers are supposed to take the top 3. That's kind of how it works. And then after a while, you learn to do this. What's important is learning to do 4 beats to the bar with your thumb instead of 1. Instead of puff, the magic, dragon. What you got to do is see if you can get it going 4 to the bar, like. So that's just the thumb, and then the fingers the fingers are supposed to sort of jump into the little spaces in between. That's where it gets tricky. This was me at the end of my teens, learning how to fingerpick, and then eventually you do learn to fingerpick, and even to pick out tunes, and so on. So you're picking tunes, and then as I became later into my teens, I got a little better at that. And when I got to Leeds to be a reporter on the local paper before I actually went to university there, and I met up with Steve Phillips, who was a blues singer and a player, and he played one of these beautiful silver guitars, these Nationals, and I started my love affair with these. But really, with fingerpicking, it develops. You get a little better at it as time goes on, and you start essentially what it is really, you start to realize that what they were doing, the great players were doing, they were imitating the stride piano at the time. There's music and accompaniment going on. So we played ragtime, we did country blues music for years and years and years. And that was Cafe Race. No, this was before this was still playing that. And then a bit later on, when I got down teaching, I got down into London, a teacher who I was working with, and we formed a little rock and roll R&B and the rockabilly band, the Cafe Races. There were only 3 musicians, a guitar, bass, and drums, and a singer. But again, it's pretty good. So, and I've been playing with a girl at school, teaching her to fingerpick when I was back in grammar school. So we did harmonies together. So that was 2 of us, and then I learned to play with a group of 3 people, and then later on 4, and then you get a pianist in, and you go, wow. That's really changed everything, and then 2 keyboard, but it gets worse after that. But what you do is you become a sort of half-baked arranger. You become an amateur arranger just by turning up.
So could we move on to Dire Straits?
Yeah.
Started in.
I'm very bad on dates, but I think it was about 77.
Okay. And when we talked about you as a lyricist, you were saying, which I thought was really fascinating, that in your creative life, there's a very, very close connection between geography, books, and songwriting.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I might get a song from a scrap of newspaper, and I might get a song from something somebody says. I might get a song from a bucket of tar, and I could get a song from anything. But quite a few have come from books.
Sorry to interrupt. What sort of song have you got from bucket of tar?
Nothing. But now that you've mentioned it, I'm going to have to think about it. Yes, sometimes they're books, and
So Telegraph Road.
Yes, man, just songs like that where sometimes a book that I'm reading will collide with where I happen to be, and there have been a few songs like that. Telegraph Road was one I was reading Growth of the Soil by Nut Hampson, and I happened to be on this Telegraph Road outside of Detroit. It was a big, long road, and I started thinking about how it had begun, and because that particular book was about the beginning of the civilization, I would start thinking of that Crumb cartoon, you know, where there's just this Arcadia and then it builds up into Dunkin' Donuts and Texaco and stuff.
Yeah.
And the modern urban scene.
Yeah. But when a book sort of gets you to think of a lyric, is it while you're reading it or a month later? Because you have also got quite a reputation with yourself for writing a lyric and then a number of years later as well.
Yeah, well, that secondary waltz thing, I mean, this is slow, right? I wrote that about 40 years ago, and it's only just now the tunes come along and said, well, okay, it's about time you did this. You know, that thing that I just played? And, I mean, this is slow. I'll give you, I can't remember when John Lennon was murdered, I think it was about 82. I could be wrong. Okay, well, I wrote a song at the time. We were playing in Germany, and we got to Germany, and it had just happened. And there was a very creepy autograph hunter there who was in spectacles and a raincoat, and he was waiting for us. Airport, he was at the hotel, he was everywhere. He's a very strange looking boy man. And his name was Rudiger. And the name stuck with me, and he stuck with me like a limpet. He would be at the hall, you know, he'd be waiting. Hello, Mr. Knopfler, and he was like, and I said to him after a few days, you know, he was there with an autograph friend of his. I said, you'd want Saddam Hussein's autograph. And his friend said, what's wrong with that? And it was starting to get to me. So anyway, I wrote this song called Rudiger. He struck me as a very sad character. But now the point is I wrote the song, and then the music didn't come along till, the right music, it didn't come along till 1996. So my maths ain't great, but it's a few years. Stands in the rain and the snow, collector of autographs, pictures of photographs, faces of people who everyone knows. Rudiger lives in a place on a briefcase and spectacles, strange and respectable. He knows the feeling of being alone. Oh, Rudiger, Rudiger, Rudy, oh, Rudiger. And so on. And so he was just
Have you any idea why there's this sometimes very long gap 1982, Here Comes the Music?
Well, it's a good question, Matthew. I wish I knew the answer. I think it's got something to do sometimes with a circumstance you find yourself in. I was working with some very good musicians, and I've been starting to write at that point with for string bass as well, you know, and I think it was just part of the musical expansion that was happening at the time for me, and a feeling of freedom that the song could have. I tried it in other ways, and of just a feeling of freedom that the song could live the way it wanted to live. And you just got to kind of wait. I don't go nuts if there's not if a tune doesn't want to happen. I sort of feel as though it will eventually, even if it takes 40 years. But I can't be slow.
Yeah. Okay. So talk a bit about Dire Straits. I mean,